everybody, welcome to play 3, the cowl. How is it going? How was play 2? Hopefully you had a lot of fun. I know we were, play 1 we were working this way, then play 2 we were working out. And if you checked out play 3, now we're working up again. So it's, changing the directions on you, keeping your mind sharp. It's all that little bits of extra things that I try to put into the Tournament of Stitches this year to make it extra fun for you. And today you definitely have that. You'll have lots of fun stitches that you get to do, but as you're doing it, you get to join as you go and learn a new technique and see how you like it. There's lots of fun twists involved, and I can't wait to get started. So let's join me down here at my table and see what we got this week. Play 3 of Smooth Jazz. Right here is my little video swatch, so you can kind of get an idea of everything that we have going on. This was play 1, moving out. These were play 2, and here's play 3. Play 3, you'll notice, is just like play 1. If you want, you can have the bottom part be smooth jazz and the top part be smooth jazz, or the bottom part be smooth jazz and the top part be anything you want, or vice versa. You have options. So now yours could look totally different. If you did smooth jazz the whole time, this is what it would look like with smooth jazz for each of the play 1s, each of the play 2s, and each of the play 3s. Obviously, if you did any other amount, so don't worry, yours looks slightly different. It's kind of a fun sampler as it will turn into. And again, we get to change direction and we're working up. The difference here, what we're going to be doing is that when we're working our odd rows, we're going to come in and we're going to slip stitch and join to this play 2. Then when you start your even rows, you will slip stitch up twice and work your way back. That slip stitch up twice will kind of act like a turning chain. So we actually are seaming this together all in one. It's kind of nice little extra technique to learn today. So not only do we get this really cool looking stitch pattern, but we get to join as we go. Same time. It's lots of fun. All right, let's look at the stitch pattern. The stitch pattern actually does have a little bit of texture to it, which I really like. But if we open it up, inside what we have is we have these cute little clusters, kind of like they're making their own little shell here. And then in between them, we have these V's, and these V's are raised just slightly. So if I turn my work for you, you can see a little bit of the texture. So move it around a little bit. They're raised just slightly with some post stitches. So we have a couple of fun different things going on. Let's move to this side and big surprise, move in our chart so we can talk about our chart. All right, looking at our symbols, how I like to start, you can see that most of this is everything that you've already know, with the chains, single crochets, double crochets, foundation double crochets. Yep, they're back. If you thought you were going to be rid of them, you're not. Stacked double crochets, and then a few different things for us are clusters and front post double crochets. If you've done some of the other ones, you might have run into these guys already. But don't worry if you haven't done it yet. We're going to do it all together. All right, looking at our stitch diagram, the first thing to notice is what in the world is going on with this edge along here. And what we have going on there is that all of these single crochets, all of these dots are telling us that when we get to the end, when we get to play 2, you're going to slip stitch to the edge. This is just kind of like your little reminder of, oh yeah, don't forget, you're going to be slip stitching to the edge here and there. Otherwise, if you look inside of this chart, most of this is not too crazy. At the beginning of the rows, we have a stack stitch on the odd rows. Obviously, you could do a chain 3 if you wanted. Then inside, what we have are what I like to think of these little shells, which is just a cluster, chain 2 cluster in the same space. Now, if you notice, they look like they're pointing in between these 2 double crochets. So if I, on all of the odd rows, they are not pointing into a stitch. And that's true. These guys are not going into these 2 double crochets. They're going into the space between the 2 double crochets. So that's the first oddball thing to notice. Then otherwise, only on, grab another color, only on our right side rows, our odd rows, are we going to have our front post stitches. So our front post stitches only happen into these double crochets below on our odd rows or our right side rows. Otherwise, it's pretty simple in terms of, yes, this is a 4-row repeat, and yes, you can't really start repeating until you get to row 3, so 3 through 6 repeat, because this kind of sets us up and then we get into it. But if you look and see that when we are working, they really become the same kind of sets of directions. So if you look at row 5 and if you look at row 3, it's the same set of directions, meaning that you're going to have a shell and then 2 front post stitches, a shell, 2 front post stitches. So what is happening at the beginning of the rows, that changes. But what happens on the inside of your pattern really is more like a 2-row repeat. You have something that happens on when you are working on the wrong side rows and something that happens when you're working on the right side. Breaking it down, I find, helps me a lot of kind of keeping track of where I am, and I like to play with it. But let's look and see what it looks like all together and when we actually get into it. All right, so I'm going to move the stitch diagram out of the way for me. You can look at it on your screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this side of my work. So yes, I'm upside down. Meaning that if you by accident join play 3 upside down, don't worry about it. The main thing that I care about when you are joining and working play 3 on your cowl is that you're on the right side. So for Smooth Jazz, you want all these bumps, all the nubs from play 2 to be up, looking up at you. You want them to be looking really pretty. That's how I want you to choose the right side. But if you are joining this way, I don't care if it's upside down or not. That doesn't matter to me. I had mine right side up, obviously, for the video swatch, but it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter just as long as this part is on the right side. All right. So row 1 is where we go ahead and we do foundation double crochets, which no problem. You know how to do them from play 1, right? So you're already an expert at this. This part, no problem. Now, real quick, if you hated the foundation double crochets, what I want you to do instead is I want you to chain. So you need to have 57 stitches, I believe, in your pattern. What I want you to do instead is, if you don't like these foundation double crochets, to chain 59, then in the 4th round from the hook, put a double crochet and put a double crochet all the way across. So when you're done, you end up with 56 double crochets and a chain 3 turning chain. So it'll end up with 57 stitches as well. Now, I really like these foundation double crochets to make them extra stretchy and that they're not super tight at the bottom. But if you don't want to do them, I'm totally okay with that. All right. So we have our foundation double crochets for us already done. Now all we have to do is do the weird part that says slip stitch to the 3rd stitch. on play 2. Well, what in the world does that mean? That means that I want us to join these two together. So if I remove this from my hook, if I hold it like this and I joined it to the corner, you can see that this would be hanging down too low. So the reason why I tell you to join to the third one is so that your two edges will align perfectly like that. That's the only reason that these two are slightly, that's like the weird, odd wording of it. So all you have to do is count 1, 2, 3, and you'll just put a slip stitch. So 1, 2, 3, put a slip stitch in your play 2, and now they're joined together. It tells you not to turn because what I want you to do is now you're going to go ahead and you're going to slip stitch into the next stitch on play 2 and slip stitch into the next stitch on play 2. Then you turn your work. So the reason is, if you look at it on the side, it almost looks like you were making chains. So those two slip stitches will kind of act as your turning chain, so then you can turn your work. Before I turn my work, last thing, you'll notice that down here is not connected. If this is going to drive you crazy and you still have a tail that you didn't weave in from last play, you can always join these, weave this tail through so that these are sucked together. I'm going to let you in on a secret in that I'm going to put something along this edge that will suck all of this together so you don't have to worry about that. But sometimes this can drive people a little crazy. So if it does, go ahead and you can just weave this in to make it a straight edge. But for me, I'm not even going to worry about it, and I'm going to totally ignore it. All right. So after you have your essentially 3 slip stitches on play 2, remember 1 joined row 1 and the other 2 to make it up to 3 was the start of our row 2. Now we get to set up our pattern. Is kind of how I like to work or think about row 2. What's going to happen is we're going to put a double crochet in the first double crochet. Then in the next double crochet, we'll put 2 double crochets. Now we get to start our pattern, and we skip 1, 2 double crochets. In the next double crochet, I'm going to put a 2 double crochet cluster. If you haven't done that before, it looks just like a double crochet, except you're going to yarn over and only pull through 2. So it kind of made like one leg. Then we yarn over, insert our hook into the same space, pull up a leg, yarn over, pull through 2. So I have like 2 legs on my hook or 3 loops. I yarn over, pull through all of those. That made the first cluster. Then we chain 2, and we'll do it again. So we'll put another 2 double crochet cluster in the same spot. And the cluster plus the chain 2, I like to think of this as kind of like a shell all together there. Then we skip 2, 1, 2, and we put 2 double crochets in the next space. So you just repeat this. Skip 2, put a shell, skip 2, put 2 double crochets. So I'm going to repeat that across for our setup row. And it only happens once because on the rest of your even rows, we put these shells in between the double crochets, and we don't do that here on our setup. But that's okay. It gets us something to work on, and we can move from there. All right, shell on the next one. And these clusters, they can be as big and fat or as tall. They can be all sorts of different things. So you'll notice that I call them a cluster, but they could have been trebles, they could have been 3 legs, they could be all sorts of different things. So you want to make sure that you're reading the special stitches to find out exactly how to make them every time you read the pattern. All right, we are almost to the end here. We skip these 2, put 2 double crochets in the second to last stitch. and then a double crochet in the last stitch. When you're done, we have the setup all ready to go. You can see it. Okay, now we get to turn. You'll notice in the pattern that I have stack stitches to start. If you hated those stack stitches before, feel free just to use a chain 3. I'm fine with it. I don't mind. If you want a reminder, the stack stitch is where you insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, insert your hook between the 2 vertical legs, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So stack stitch in the first one. We will put a double crochet in the next double crochet. And now we get to start our front post stitches. A front post stitch is just like a regular stitch, except, so you're going to yarn over, then you're going to insert your hook from the front to the back of the stitch to the front again. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Don't worry, we have a lot more. We'll see. In the next chain 2 space, I'm going to put our shell. For us, it's our cluster. I like to think that it's almost like you've half made 2 double crochets. So when you yarn over, pull up, and pull through 2, it's like, oops, stop. You go halfway in making a double crochet. Then you yarn over, pull through all those to smush them together. Now front post stitches in the next 2 double crochets. We're going to yarn over. Another way of looking at it is you're popping that next stitch on your hook. When it's sitting on top of your hook, it's a front post stitch. So yarn over, pull around it, then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, finish your stitch, and then again, it's almost like I'm popping it on my hook to make my front post stitch. And they sit up a little higher. All right, shell in the next one, or think of it as cluster, chain 2 cluster. If you wanted yours fatter, you certainly could make these a 3 double crochet cluster if you wanted them a little fatter. I'm going to keep mine 2 double crochet clusters. Now I'm going to do 2 front post stitches. So I have a little dimension to it. Then I come over here and do another shell. Chain 2 with another cluster. When we get to the last 3 stitches, we do a front post stitch in the first one, and then just a regular double crochet in the last 2 double crochets. Now, one thing when you start the first one, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to get into this last double crochet. If you want to go around it, so kind of like you're going around the extra part that was made from the slip stitch, I'm fine with it. If you don't want to try to jam your hook into the top of those 2 stitches, no one's really going to notice. Just a little tip there. So if you want to go into that space instead, that's fine. Doesn't bother me at all. Put it wherever it's easiest for you to put your hook. All right. At the end of the row, what it tells you to do is skip the next stitch on your play 2. Because basically, if you line these up, if you joined it to the next stitch, it's too short. You want to be up a little bit higher. You can see that the top of this matches up real perfectly if I drew a line across. If I skip the next one and then go into the next stitch to put a slip stitch. Then slip stitch in the next 2 stitches on play 2 before we turn our work. But before I get that far, let's lay down and show you what it looks like so far so you can see. Basically what you'll have is you'll have your shells clustered on top of each other, and you have your V stitches in between, or 2 groups of 2 stitches in between. Now we're going to mess it up essentially. What happens with the row 2s is wherever you have 2 double crochets, you're going to put a shell, and wherever you have a shell, you're going to put 2 double crochets. All right. So with that, let's just see exactly where that shell goes, and then I will let you go because you guys can do the rest of this. You guys got this. All right. To start it off, you're going to put a double crochet in the first double crochet, a double crochet in the next double crochet, chain 1. Now, in the space, it says in the space before the next double crochet, you're going to put a cluster. So basically, if you look at these 2 stitches, there's a space here. That's where I want you to put it. So you're going to put your cluster that you've been doing in the space before the next double crochet. And that's how that sits. If you by accident put it in the stitch, who cares? No one's going to see it. No one's going to notice. It'll be fine. Then you skip, and into this chain 2 space, you're going to put 2 double crochets. Now you get to these 2 double crochets. And what I want you to do is in the space, so in the space between where these 2 sit, you'll be going around all of those top bars. You're going to put your shell. So you're going to insert between. I'm going between, and I'm going around those bars. In between the 2 stitches is where I'm inserting my hook. So again, chain 2. Then I'm going to go in between these 2 stitches to put my shell. Do a double crochet in the next one. In the next chain 2 space, put 2 double crochets. All right, so when we look at it, what happens is when you're putting your hook in between these 2 stitches, it really opens them up and makes them nice and wide. And on the front, it'll open up that V and make the V even more pronounced too. All right, let me just do that one more time, and then I'm going to let you go. All right, so open up between your 2 double crochets. I want you to open them up. You're going to insert your hook between the 2 posts to insert your hook where it's really easy, where you have lots of space. And that's where you're going to put your cluster, chain 2, and then another cluster. So it's nice, big space to go into. It just seems like you're doing it wrong, but you're not. You're doing it right. And then just continue on with the pattern. You got it. That's the only other little oddball part of it. Otherwise, you got this. This is going to turn out beautiful and really have a little bit of lace and a little bit of texture. So again, if you want to take a look of what it looks like when you're all done, it's a really nice, beautiful fabric that actually comes out when you're all done. So enjoy this week. Go crochet, have a lot of fun. Don't forget to share your work with us on the Marley's Minions Facebook group. And I can't wait to see you later. So enjoy your week. Talk to you later.